Level design is obviously a very important thing for all games, but especially for a strategy game. You need to balance everything right, and I think that the Pikmin games do this pretty well. So there are some problems with it, and those problems really hit me when I started Olimar's Shipwrecked Tale in Pikmin 4. And that's because this mode is quite different. You only have 15 days to get 30 ship parts, and you only have red, blue, and yellow Pikmin. And it's quite short. It's basically just Pikmin 1 with a bunch of new stuff from Pikmin 4 stuffed into it. And it's definitely my favorite part of Pikmin 4. Now, Pikmin 1 was pretty good, but some of the bugs and AI of the Pikmin could get annoying, and it was overall quite short. Pikmin 2 I think is the best. It's a lot longer, it has random elements to it to keep it interesting on repeat playthroughs, and there are less glitches than Pikmin 1. It also has a lot meaner enemies that can pretty much kill your entire squad if you're not being careful. And while I consider that a good thing, since it keeps the game interesting, I can see how some people might consider that a negative thing. Oh yeah, and there was no day limit, which kinda got rid of any real sense of urgency. And Pikmin 3 is probably my least favorite. It was a lot easier other than the challenge modes, and I didn't have any trouble with the game. I didn't find it to be as replayable as Pikmin 2. And there wasn't a lot that could destroy your entire team in seconds, unless you really messed up with a bomb rock. And although the day limit was back, it really wasn't as threatening as Pikmin 1, because as long as you were collecting fruit, you didn't really need to hurry. It just always felt like even if you were low on juice, you could just find more the next day. There wasn't that set in stone day limit like Pikmin 1. And now, with Pikmin 4, the day limit's gone again. And I can see how some people would like this, but I think Pikmin just really needs that sense of urgency of having a time limit. If you lose a bunch of Pikmin, sure, you might have to spend a day making more Pikmin, but there aren't any real consequences. A day limit, on the other hand, forces you to spend your time correctly. If you're constantly losing Pikmin and having to spend time making more, you're going to suffer from it. But even though I like the time limit, I remember when I was younger, I didn't get Pikmin because the time limit scared me. And I know there were a lot of other people who just didn't play Pikmin 1 because the time limit was too intimidating. Another problem with the time limit is because of how big games are now. Let's say for example, you spend 40 hours trying to get everything, that you don't have enough days to complete everything, and now you have to start over, or go back to a much earlier day. The reason why Pikmin 1 worked so well was because of how short the game was. If you messed up, it wasn't a big deal because you could do it all again in a few hours. With a longer game, it just starts to get annoying after a while. And I still think that the days in Pikmin 1 was a bit too long. I like the 15 days in Olimar's Shipwrecked Tale. It's just impossible to make a time limit that works for everyone. However, there's one thing I thought of that I think would be perfect. I have no idea how it would work from a story perspective, but gameplay-wise, I think it would be good. And that would be to make the whole game just different mini-stories, like a bunch of Olimar's Shipwrecked Tales. So you might need to get 40 treasures in 20 days, and then the Pikmin types you can get are only red, blue, and winged. Or maybe you have to get 20 fruits in 10 days, and only have rocks and purple Pikmin. This would really force you to get creative with the Pikmin you have, and would really allow you to customize your experience. Maybe you can even have the option to turn off the day limit so newer players have an easier time. The randomization of Pikmin 2's caves would also work really well here, since it would keep things interesting every new playthrough. I also find the best part of Pikmin is when you have very little to work with. When you just start a new save file and only have that red onion to work with. I don't know, there's just something fun and simple about it. And you also have to be careful. When you get your first yellow Pikmin, you have to make sure he doesn't die because he's the only one you've got. I mean, imagine having 100 purples to work with in a giant cave with a lot of bosses. Or only having white Pikmin with 5 days to get 50 treasures. Pikmin already has such good gameplay, it's pretty much perfect. Nothing about it really needs to change majorly. It just needs more ways to force you to use those mechanics. More strategy. Look at Bloons Tower Defense 6, for example. It really doesn't have that much to it, yet because you can replay the same levels over again with different mechanics thrown in, and different events keep happening, like the bosses, the odysseys, the races, it just never really gets boring. The gameplay of Bloons is great. It doesn't need some big, complicated story constantly changing. And even though the idea is simple, of just placing down towers to pop balloons. Because the game always remixes everything, it's always interesting. Even just playing on a new map with things being in different areas can completely change the game. There's also the custom challenges made by players, which I think would be great for Pikmin. I mean, imagine like a Pikmin maker game. I think that'd be the best option ever. Infinite Pikmin, forever. It also just appeals to more players this way, because it has the best of both worlds. If you want a short experience of collecting treasures, you can do that. If you want the caves from Pikmin 2, you can do that. The only thing that might not work well would be the story, since the more customizable it is, the less you can control what order events happen in. Though really, I don't think people are just playing Pikmin for the story. A good story is nice, but I mean, look at Mario. Peach getting kidnapped every game is completely fine as long as the gameplay is good. I think Pikmin 4 got really close to creating the perfect Pikmin game, and I really hope the next game is like Olimar Shipwreck Tale, but more. And I mean, look at how many people replay Pikmin. There are Death Bliss runs, OT only runs, speed runs, minimum day runs. Pikmin just really has to be more replayable. Another thing I think that really makes games replayable is randomness. But I'm not going to talk about that now since I already did a video about that, which you can see here if you want.